Let's talk to David Paul. He's the Managing Director of VectorVest UK. Morning to you, David.
Good morning, Mus.
Right, we've got some slides to run through, all thought-provoking as always. Let's kick off with the first one, USA market timing. Tell me what's going on there.
Well, in my view, the sell-off, dramatic sell-off we saw over the last week or two started in the US, so I think that if we're going to look to see as to whether these markets are going to keep going on the upside, we need to look to the US as well. The point of this particular slide is that we've been here before. Pretty much 2 years ago, the market sold off into February 2016. We were here just as President Trump was elected, and the market sold off in the last day or two again, as we all know. The VectorVest market timing methodology has got a contrarian element in that we have two proprietary indicators under the price of the US market. We have our market timing indicator and we have our proprietary buy-sell ratio. Now, we've been running in the US for the last 28 years. The market timing indicator is mathematically massaged between 0 and 2.
Right.
And we've shown that when it gets down to about 0.6, and the buy-sell ratio is right down at about 0.2. In other words, there's 5 times more companies on a sell recommendation than a buy recommendation, that the market is oversold. And 80% of the time over the last 28 years, when those two conditions occur, we get a strong bounce or a rally. Now, that happened in the middle of February 2016. It happened just before Trump was elected nearly 18 months ago, I suppose. And it happened the other day. So we expect a strong bounce from here. The contrarian element is very useful if you're one of those people who like to get in well ahead of the crowd, especially if you're an options player. It helps with the volatility.
Understood. Okay, well, let's blow into that. That's a daily candlestick. In terms of the market timing, now, you've always told me, okay, that you have your long-term and your short-term. Long-term, short-term, are they both on a sell, both on a buy at the moment?
No, the short-term trend is up. Longer-term trend is down. So,
okay. Just to reiterate, you wouldn't enter new positions until they're both in uptrend.
Well, that's the conservative way of doing it.
Right.
More aggressive players, spread bettors et al., could quite easily get in with the short-term trend and then add to their positions as the longer-term trend actually follows suit. Okay, but if you're a conservative looking to play and take advantage of longer-term cycles in the market, then you'd still be waiting for a little bit of confirmation.
Understood.
And on that particular chart, I said a second ago that the markets get very oversold when the MTI gets down to 0.6 and the buy-sell ratio gets down to about 0.2.
Right.
However, the other side of that is that they become very overbought when the MTI gets up to 1.6 and the buy-sell ratio goes above 4.
Which we had there.
Which we had there. And that was saying that that market, in fact, was stretched to the upside. And we saw what happened.
Okay, so just for clarity, in terms of this slide, what we're saying is you've got some momentum readings that are basically saying every 6 to 9 months you'll get an overbought or an oversold condition, which is based on some ratios that's proprietary to you.
That's correct, yes. The market timing indicator and the buy-sell ratio, when they get very overbought, that's the time to be very careful in the market and not to be adding to any positions. And when they get very oversold, that's saying that there's a good chance that there's a bounce or a rally on the way, and adventurous traders can actually load up their positions well ahead of a trend-following signal.
Right.
Or at least buy a few and then add to those when the market confirms. So
you sounded like Jesse Livermore there. Okay, let's have a look at the next slide. The UK market timing, up or down. What's this telling us?
That's the UK over the last 6 months, and you can see the red triangle, which was the longer-term trend turning down. I haven't marked the short-term trend on the chart, but at the moment the short-term trend is up. It's been up for the last 3 or 4 days. Longer-term trend is still down.
Down, right.
Adventurous players could certainly, I've bought into a few positions, small, over the last day or two, and I shall add to those positions when the longer-term trend turns upwards. And I've got a few in the next few slides that I think are interesting.
Okay, so Griffin Mining.
Well, Griffin Mine I've spoke about on your program many times, and The thick green line above the price is our valuation, showing that it's undervalued. The blue line study in the window below the price is earnings per share growth, and that's driving the share price up the page. This is a small gold miner and zinc miner based in China. They've got no debt in the business at all. It recently pulled back and to previous resistance in a pattern that technicians refer to as a spring, believe it or not, based on the work of a chap called Richard Wyckoff, who wrote a book about it about 100 years ago. And based on that, it's on a buy recommendation. It's pushing strongly up the page, and I think that there is legs in Griffin, maybe another 20–30% on the upside. It's a lovely little company.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one, JD Sports.
Well, JD Sports, we all know, it had a massive run over the last few years. I got stopped out of it as it sold off, but I bought into it again, and it seems to be charting a nice reversal pattern. The numbers themselves were exceptionally good recently, and technicians should notice what we call a bull flag over the last day or two, and it seems to be breaking up strongly through that bull flag. So I think that there's a lot of upside, assuming the general market can move on JD Sports.
So just for clarity, what is that lower line there?
That lower line is the VectorVest stop loss.
Okay, so so if it touched it or it has to close below it?
Well, that would depend on your own personal trading plan. But on my trading plan, if I buy a share and I'm unleveraged, in other words, it's not a CFD, it's not a spread bet, then I look for a close below the stop loss.
Understood. Okay, so that's very clear. Let's move on to FeverTree, a firm favourite. There's been some bid rumours recently. This is just a fantastic story, isn't it?
Well, it's a glamour stock, certainly. Well, yes. Yeah. It broke, and I always like to see if a share breaks a fairly marked trend line and it gaps through it, invariably that's a strong signal. In fact, when Zach was sitting in that chair, he used to call that the rocket launcher. That was his terminology for it. It gapped up, it pulled back, kissed the trend line, which is always a good sign. It's now pushing back up the page again. Earnings per share growing very strongly, and I think that there's marked upside in FeverTree from here, and I'm certainly on board.
Understood. And let's wrap up with KAZ, K-A-Z.
KAZ, copper's had a cracking time, and the copper price and KAZ pretty much doing the same thing. Copper price came back and was bought at a 78% of a popular Fibonacci level of the last range. KAZ did exactly the same thing, moving up the page from now. Technicians will note the 5-wave continuation pattern, and invariably after 5 waves, the market starts to move strongly in the upside. Old chap called William Gann always used to say that markets break on the 4th attempt, and this will be the 4th attempt to break those highs. As you can see, markedly undervalued on our VectorVest program, growing earnings very strongly indeed, and I think that one can safely be on board with the stop loss as calculated by the program.
Okay, so just finally, we've seen some classic charts that you like. So do people scan through and then basically they get a list of the stocks that would be on your buy model and indeed your sell model?
Well, yes, of course. We've got a thing on the program called UniSearch, and you can program your own criteria as per your own trading plan. I personally look for shares that are undervalued, shares that are growing earnings strongly, and I also like to see where earnings have in fact been marked up by the analyst. In other words, there's been a step increase in earnings. That normally is a good a predictor of a share price move.
So if you were considering buying FeverTree then, how much research are you doing before you make that investment decision? Because people are critical, say, oh, you know, that when you go and buy a car, you spend hours and hours on it, and it should be the same theory when you're buying stocks and shares.
Well, we can analyze a stock fundamentally in 30 seconds.
Okay.
And the algorithm has been around for 28 years. It works out a valuation for every stock every day, so you can see immediately whether it's over or undervalued. We work out the price appreciation potential over a window of 3 years into the future in relation to a AAA rated corporate bond. We call that relative value. The algorithm looks at the balance sheet, the income statement, the cash flow statement over the last 5 or 6 years, and evaluates the safety of the earnings. We call that relative safety, and we mathematically massage those numbers on a scale between 0 and 2. Above 1, reasonable safety of earnings. Above 1.3, this is a company that's making money, and all those ghastly financial ratios are getting better. And then clearly we work out the trend, and we put that all together into the master indicator VST, value, safety and trend. And all of the shares in the London market as a default are actually sorted by descending VST, and that's where the winners are. So we can circumnavigate all of that work, and it'll take you a day or two to trust it, and we offer a 30-day trial for a £5, so everybody can actually spend some time and test what we say.
Okay, and on that note, your website?
It's VectorVest.co.uk. Tomorrow night in Mayfair, I'm holding a seminar at the Chesterfield Hotel. And if you go to VectorVest.co.uk, then you can register for that seminar. It's a free seminar. And on Saturday at the Holiday Inn at Regent's Park, I'm doing a full-day seminar on swing trading, shorter-term trading with VectorVest, where we'll be using the short-term trend to get in and out of positions that last from a few days to a few weeks, short-term trading with VectorVest.
David, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mus.